world stands at an inflection point.
And we face an inflection point.
As we stand at this inflection point in history,
We're at an inflection point.
we're at an inflection point.
We now face an inflection point.
We're at an inflection point in history.
Make no mistake about it. We're living at an inflection point in history.
Anyway,
We're at an inflection point in the history of this country.
I believe America is at an inflection point.
Today we face an inflection point.
An inflection point.
An inflection point.
We are really at one of those inflection points.
Look, we're at an inflection point. We meet tonight at an inflection point. One of those moments that only a few generations ever face. You know, we are at an inflection point that occurs every 3 or 4 generations. Comes along every 4 or 5 generations. It's happened every 5, 6 generations throughout history. Things are changing. Let me say it, I'm sure, it's at an inflection point. It happens every 6 or 8 generations where so much changes in the world. Anywhere from 40 to 80 years in America, there's an inflection point. We have to choose what direction we're going to go. And it happens every some 50 to 75 years. And folks, I know you may not agree, but I, honest to God, think we've been delivered to one of those inflection points in American history that hasn't occurred since the 30s.
I call these inflection points.
We are at an inflection point. The world is changing whether we like it or not.
An inflection point.
I call them inflection points. Great change only occurs at those inflection points. And we're at one of those points right now. At an inflection point. There comes times where there's an inflection point. Leave America, and you're tired of hearing me say it, I'm sure it's at an inflection point. And as you heard me say before, many times, I apologize for repeating it, but the world's at an inflection point. We really are. I know you're tired of hearing me say this. We really are at one of the inflection points. I know it's an overused phrase, but I've been using it a lot. We're at an inflection point. Again, I apologize for repeating myself, but I know many of you heard me say, I think we're at an inflection point in history. It's an overused phrase these days, but it's still accurate. We're at an inflection point in American history.
We're at an inflection point. I know I've maybe overused that phrase, but it is an inflection point.
Inflection point. I know you're tired of hearing me say this when I was running, and I continue to say it every day. We're at what they used to call in our math classes. We're at an inflection point here. It's like driving an automobile. You're heading straight. Once you make the commitment to turn, you turn, and as you're turning, at one point you're dead straight again. And at that point, when you turn, there's no turning back.
Remember from your physics class, your hands are in the steering wheel, the automobile is going straight, and one slight turn sends the car in a direction fundamentally different and initially unalterable.
I used to have a professor in undergraduate school who said inflection points where you're going down the highway 50 miles an hour and you take an abrupt turn right or left.